What's up, you guys? It's Erin, and I'm back on YouTube. I think it's coming up 2 years since the last time I posted anything on YouTube, which is really bad because if you look back at like the bottom of my YouTube, I started making YouTube videos for fun in high school. I've always really loved YouTube. So if you're new here, welcome. My name is Erin, and I've been posting fitness content mainly on social media for a little over 2 years now, and I've mainly been on Instagram, somewhat TikTok. I used to post weekly on YouTube and haven't, like I said, in like 2 years, but I really enjoy posting on social media, and I kind of stopped on every platform for a little while because I was really going through it. If you've been here, you know that I'm originally from Alabama and I moved to Houston, Texas like October of 2021, I believe. I moved out there for the whole fitness scene to try to pursue social media, and I thought that fitness was the way that I was supposed to do that. I ultimately ended up boxing myself in to that category. It really fit me at first because let's go back in time a little bit. Back in 2021, I was in kind of a low place. I was in this place where I was trying to like recover from so many things that I had just back to back had to go through. Starting with like back in 2015, my grandpa died from pancreatic cancer. And then after that, it was like just this whole domino effect of one thing after another happening in my family, and ultimately my family kind of ended up falling apart, and my parents got divorced when I was, I think, like a sophomore in high school. So that whole process was really challenging and hard to go through. I know a lot of people have to go through divorce and families splitting apart, and I would not wish that upon anyone. I have a really good relationship with my family now, so it was probably for the best because we were a bit dysfunctional, but I felt really alone through that because, like I said, my grandpa had died. Then my grandma ended up moving because my grandparents lived near us, and she ended up selling her house and moving up north to Iowa. My sister is 11 years older than me, and she had moved away when she was like 18. So she wasn't here to kind of help me get through it. I was in an abusive relationship for almost 6 years. I think we dated for like 5.5 years. So that was another thing that I was dealing with, and it really just felt like one thing after another. High school became a little challenging. I started to dislike school. My grades started to fall. I ended up doing virtual school for a semester. Then I did early graduation, so I graduated high school a semester early. Roll around for like May, the time that I would get to walk with my high school class for graduation. My dad had a really bad accident. He fell off a ladder in our driveway, landed on his head on the concrete. I was home and I was the one who found him, and that was a very traumatic thing. My dad was so lucky and so blessed to come out of that how he did, but he ended up having to have emergency brain surgery because he had a brain bleed and brain swelling. He broke so many bones. I don't even, it's like we can laugh about it now because my dad is somehow okay. He still works and he's able to do everything that he was before, but for a while we didn't know if he was going to be able to function like he did before. Like there was points in time where when he was still in a rehab hospital, he literally couldn't speak. So that was another thing I was having to deal with. I basically was 18, like freshly 18, just graduated high school, and my dad was in the hospital. I even went to go see my dad in the hospital with my cap and gown. I became my dad's caretaker full time, so I was living by myself for like a month because my dad was in the hospital, and I would go see him every day. When he was in the rehab facility, I was able to bring our dog and go see him, so that was kind of special, but it was hard. For 5 months, my life was just like on hold. I saw all of my friends going off to college and moving away for the first time, and I just felt really isolated, but me and my dad are best friends, and so I wanted to be there for my dad, and I wouldn't have done anything different. But it was hard because at that point in life I felt like everyone else my age was so focused on themselves and their future, and I wasn't. I was focused on literally everyone but myself. And then after that, once your dynamic with like a parent switches like that, you kind of have to take on more of the role of being the parent and being like that caretaker. It kind of doesn't go back to like how it was before. I was just always trying to be there for my dad. It was the year that I ended up moving in 2021. His accident was in 2019. So the year I moved to Houston, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer. A little doggy over here. But that was just another thing. But it was just one thing after another. And I was just feeling so overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, I'm a 20-year-old. I had dropped out of college. I had no idea what I was doing. I was planning my entire life around everyone but myself. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I had also gotten out of my abusive relationship at the beginning of that year. I just knew that I needed to take action and I just needed to do something for myself. Kind of on a whim, literally such a whim, I decided that I was going to move to Houston because I had just kind of stepped foot into this whole scene of like the fitness industry within social media. I still had a small social media account, but I was seeing some success with it. I started online coaching, so I was making money through social media, and I was like, okay, well, I can do this, and this way I don't have to go to college, and I can pursue more of a business path, and I'll just do this, and I'm gonna move there, and everything will be fine. So I didn't really think about it. I had never been on my own before either. And mind you, this whole time that I'm being a caretaker, I'm not working, so I'm not making my own money. And I wasn't having to really worry about finances because I was living at home and my job was taking care of my dad. I was really covered in that sense, which I was very blessed to have that and not have to worry about also supporting myself or my family financially. When I moved, I don't know, it was just this big shock, like stepping into a totally different world. So it goes New York, LA, Chicago, Houston, in size of the cities in the US. So I literally had no idea how big Houston was until I went there for the first time and I had already signed my lease. So when I moved there from Alabama, it was total culture shock as well. Now, luckily I had just an amazing group of friends and we all lived at the same apartment complex, and if you've watched any of my previous vlogs, you've 100% seen that little group of friends who I still love so much. Honestly, without them, I have no idea how I would have made it through the 2 years that I did spend in Houston, because at first it was great. We were doing so much together. We were taking trips together. I was loving fitness, and at the time, having a whole presence online surrounding just this whole idea of fitness and working out, and then it turned into bodybuilding when I did my show. That really fit who I was at that time because the gym became this outlet where I would go, honestly, to release anger and to try to work through all of those things that I just kind of explained that I really hadn't processed or grieved or dealt with. It really turned me into this person who she didn't truly feel like she could be soft and feminine and express her emotions, and I was just fighting to prove to myself and other people how strong I was for years. I totally like disconnected from my inner child and who I truly am on the inside, and really? And I just really shut down in so many ways, and so the gym did become me. And so for a long time when I was getting into social media, what I was posting was really in alignment with myself because that was my life. Like I had nothing other than the gym for a while. When I moved to Houston, I did get into a very low place, but I think it was because I finally was away from home where all of those things had just built up over the years. Here's Talon, by the way. Talon, look. Hey, are you a good boy? So when I was in Houston, that was really like the first time I kind of was faced with the fact that, okay, I have to kind of work through this stuff because I was not okay. It finally all just like caught up to me and I was not okay. Are you sitting behind me? What are you doing? Huh? Talon's just gonna hang out with us, apparently. I was on a high for a while when I got to Houston, and then was very quickly hit with reality and hit with the fact that I have a lot that I need to work through. I realized that I was doing this thing where I was just fighting to try to prove how strong I was. Really, I think I was mainly trying to prove how strong I was to myself, because that was for so long kind of my coping mechanism and my escape. I just kind of adapted that as who I was and that as my personality, which part of me, I do like to be a strong person, and I've always been a very strong-minded person. I've always had very strong opinions and things I believe in. I've always been a little bit argumentative about all of those things that I believe in, because I have some personality traits about me that are strong and bold and like dominant, but that's not my entire personality. I just kind of had this whole identity crisis. Once I kind of realized that I was in an environment that I didn't really fully belong in. The whole time I was living in Houston, it was hard to make friends outside of that group that I had. And a lot of my friends were guys, and it was hard to make friends outside of that. I just realized that the fitness industry in Houston, with like my generation of people, just was not me. I didn't like what I was surrounded by. I felt like I was surrounded by a lot of things that went against my beliefs and my morals, and that also made me feel more isolated. I think I became a little bitter for a while because of that. So like my friends would tell you that like I complained a lot about hating Houston, hating the fitness industry, like, but I didn't do anything to like branch outside of that. It was really my own fault, because for some reason I convinced myself, well, I moved here for this, so I have to just continue to box myself into this category. I was still just trying to do online coaching. I was still just trying to monetize social media. Finally, the beginning of 2022 rolls around and I realize, okay, I'm not really happy. I feel like I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I kind of knew that I didn't really want to be an online coach. That wasn't really what I felt like I was supposed to be doing. I started to try new jobs. Now, mind you, I was still doing coaching through all of this. I still did have clients, and some of those clients were awesome. Like this past year, I had the best clients that I've ever been able to work with. I even got to meet one of them, because I mean, the people I've coached are people that just live all over the world even. I even had a client who flew to Houston literally for like 24 hours to come see me, and we hung out for a day, and that was a really cool experience, which I'm really grateful for. But beginning of 2022, I kind of knew, okay, I need to start trying other things. So I started doing some remote closing, and that didn't work out. I started doing door-to-door sales. I was selling solar. That ended up not working out. I got screwed over by the company I was working for. I was working with a bunch of men. I was literally like the only girl, and I did not like the environment at all. So I stopped doing that, and then I was just like, what the heck? Like, why can I not find anything that like I enjoy? And I'm just still feeling totally stuck in this box that I've placed myself in. I lost all enjoyment for working out. I was just going through the motions, honestly, for like the past year in the gym. I was just making myself show up, kind of lifting, not really feeling good, and leaving, and honestly, like, I would leave in a bad mood. I think it's because everything I was doing was out of alignment with myself, but yet I was forcing myself to continue doing the things that were making me unhappy and feeling out of alignment with myself. So it was just this vicious cycle that I was stuck in. Also, this past year, last May, I rescued Talon, and that was like a totally unplanned, unexpected thing. For some reason, like God told me to go save him, and I did. I didn't plan to keep him at first, but just ended up working out that way, where he was apparently just supposed to be my dog. And I love him so much. My experience rescuing Talon, because of his background, being a stray dog and not really having trust in people, that kind of forced me to start tapping in more to that soft side of myself, to be honest. That's like a whole other story, but God, like, literally spoke to me. I saw a TikTok of Talon in the shelter and he was gonna be euthanized within 24 hours. And I had seen him on like a pet adoption site. So I was like, what are the odds that I just came across this on my TikTok? And I told my mom, I told Ian, I told like everyone, and the only person that was telling me to do it was my sister. So I was just like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm not gonna let them put this dog down. I'm gonna foster him. Well, that did not work out. So I had to adopt him because they said he was aggressive, which he's not, but he definitely did have a lot of trust issues, and he's such a good dog now. But yeah, God literally told me to rescue him, and I think that was like the first step in the right direction for me, which sounds silly because it's like, oh, rescuing a dog is like, that changed your life, but it really did, because I'm telling you, like, God was talking to me through that experience, and I don't think I had heard God talk to me in a long time before that, because I think I had just tuned him out. I went against the odds, and I didn't listen to other people, but I listened to like my gut instinct, and I listened to God telling me to do that. That was kind of like the first time I really feel like I had to surrender things to start moving forward, and bringing him home forced me to kind of open up to that softer side of myself. This past summer, my best friend came to visit me as well. We hadn't seen each other in, I think, like 6 years. We had a long distance friendship for years. We grew up together. We've known each other since we were like 4 or 5. And we were neighbors, and we literally grew up like sisters, and then she moved away to North Carolina from Alabama. So friendship was already long distance at that point. That was like a really good experience as well, because it kind of brought me back to more of my childhood self, and I just hadn't gotten to spend time with her, someone who knows me so well and has known me for so long, before I went through all of those hardships that really changed me. So that was like a really refreshing time as well for me. While she was in town, we were all hanging out at our apartment pool, and for some reason it came up where we were talking about WWE. I've never been a WWE fan. I mean, I grew up competing in pageants. Totally not the same thing. It's like watching all these big, like, kind of people wrestling. Ready? You want it? Go get it. He loves to play fetch. Come here. So WWE had DM'd me on Instagram like a month prior to this, to my best friend being in town, and a month prior to this conversation that was so random. And I was like, wait a minute. WWE, I think I got a message from them on Instagram. It was like their WWE recruit page. I never even opened the DM. I just saw like kind of, it sounded like they were inviting me to something, and I was like, oh, why would I want to do that? I'm not a wrestler. I don't like wrestling. Like, I'm not gonna go do that. So I was just like, whatever. But I brought it up when we were all hanging out, and they were like, what? You're kidding, right? And I'm like, no, like, they sent me a message, but I thought it was weird, so I was just like, I'm not gonna do that. And they were like, you have to do that. I pulled up the message and I showed them, and sure enough, yeah, they were inviting me to a tryout that they were having in Detroit. They were gonna pay for all my travel, hotel, everything. So I was like, oh, well, I didn't read that part, so I mean, I guess I have nothing to lose. They're like, you're going to that. I was like, you think I should? Like, really? Isn't that kind of weird? Like, WWE wrestling? They're like, no, that's like so cool. Do you know how big WWE is? And so they convinced me that I was gonna go to that. I had like a call with them, and they did end up wanting me to come. So I was like, okay, well, you know, I've been in this weird place where like I felt like I didn't know what I was doing, and I just haven't been on the right path. I've been doing the wrong things. I've boxed myself into this place I don't belong. Like, maybe this, since it's so random, is like finally it. Like, finally what I'm supposed to do. Maybe this is just God like opening this random door for me. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go. I was excited about it after like I had the call with them, and they asked me on the call, like, do you really know anything about WWE? I was like, to be honest, no. Like, I know I've heard of it, but no, I don't know anything about it. But that's why I was like, in my mind, okay, maybe this is a God thing and this is like something I'm supposed to do. You know, I do have a good stage presence because of my time in pageants. Like, maybe I could be good at this and I could reach people this way. So I went, and it was a really cool experience going to Detroit for the tryout. I met a lot of awesome people, had a lot of fun. It didn't really go as planned because when I got there, you know, I had to have a physical and blood work done before going out to this event. They take it very seriously. So when I went to the physical, everything was fine, but they do a physical at the tryout with the WWE medical team. The doctor was listening to my heart and I instantly knew something was wrong. I was like, why is she listening to my heart for so long? She's telling me to hold my breath. So I'm just like what's going on? Well, she said I had a heart murmur, so they couldn't clear me to do the whole tryout. So I was like, well, great. I just came here for literally nothing. Now I'm gonna be stranded in Detroit for like 2 days, and I can't even do the tryout. Since I couldn't do the full tryout, they wouldn't even be able to offer me a job with them. So I was like, okay, well, this sucks. I remember I was really upset at first. I was literally crying in the bathroom in this hotel. By the conference room, I found out that apparently I had a heart murmur and I'm like crying on the phone to my parents and Ian, and I was just really frustrated because I thought, like I said, okay, well, maybe this is a God thing, and then that happened. Why does it really feel like one thing after another? But while I was there, I made the best of it. I had fun. I did get to do the second part of the tryout, which is what they call promos, which is talking on stage, talking on camera. I did really good at that part because, like I said, I used to do pageants. Being on stage, talking in front of people, honestly, I really enjoy. We had a big group chat of everyone who was at the tryout, and we're all waiting to hear from the recruiters. I knew I couldn't get a yes. At that point, I was already making other plans. I knew that I didn't want to stay in Houston. I knew that couldn't be a possibility. So I thought, me and Ian actually at that point thought we decided that we were gonna move out to Arizona. That's where my sister lives, and we had just gone out there before I went to the tryout. That's a whole nother story. But we thought Talon was gonna be my sister's dog, so we drove Talon to Arizona, went out there for a week, which was a really fun trip, but didn't end up working out with Talon, and I ended up keeping him, which I'm so happy with how that played out. Again, something that didn't really go as planned this year, but God had under control, just not how I thought it was gonna play out. We had just gone out to Arizona and we had fun, so we were like, okay, let's move there. My sister literally toured some places for us and FaceTimed us and took videos. We were applying the day I got a call from WWE for a rental house in Phoenix. I'm sitting out at our apartment pool again, got a theme going here, with Ian, and they call me up and he says that they really liked my promos. They said that I really stood out with promos. They actually wanted me to come back to their headquarters in Orlando, Florida for basically an extended tryout training camp kind of thing. So I was like, oh shoot, because that meant that I still could get that job offer and start. It was supposed to be around the time my lease was ending in Houston. So I was like, oh, okay, another total change of plans. So now I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe this WWE thing is what I'm supposed to do. I'm just all over the place. I'm like trying to leave it to God, but I'm like, oh, is this thing moving here? Like, God telling me I'm supposed to do this, or is he telling me I'm supposed to do this? I was so confused, and I was trying to just leave it in God's hands, but then all these moving parts, I was like, well, is he trying to tell me this with this? And I didn't know. I was really excited at that point. Ian was really excited. We didn't end up applying for that house in Phoenix. I had to get cleared with my heart thing, go see a cardiologist. Did that, I was fine. Got cleared. Through all of this, another thing happened. My dad decided he was gonna put our house in Alabama that I grew up in, that my parents built. They were gonna put it up for sale. I was kind of upset about it, but I had so many other things going on that I couldn't really think about it, so I was really distracted from the fact that they were selling my childhood house. Because to be honest, I was very, very attached to that house. I think because that felt like it was the last piece of normalcy in my life, because That was a place where once we had a big happy family. We had family gatherings. My sister lived there. My parents both lived there. My grandparents always came over. We had family visit us there. I had a lot of happy memories there, and so I think I really held on to that house because of that. I just didn't really think about it until I found out that the house sold. Didn't even find out from my parents telling me. I found out by seeing it on my mom's Facebook. Nobody bothered to tell me first. And I was really, really upset. And I was still waiting from WWE for a date of when that training camp in Orlando was gonna be. So I called my parents and I was really, not gonna lie, I was kind of pissed off at the moment. So I'm like, seriously, you sold this house that I care so much about and you didn't even bother to tell me? Because to be honest, all I really cared about at that point in time was being able to go home and stay at the house one last time. I also had a ton of stuff there still, so I also wanted to be able to go through my stuff and make sure nobody got rid of it. Then I was all stressed because I'm like, okay, now within the mix of this whole Orlando thing, I don't even have dates for it yet. Now I have to try to go home to Alabama. I ended up going home to Alabama for what was supposed to be like a week, and it just wasn't long enough. I was really enjoying my time there. It was literally only my third time going home since I had left and moved to Texas. Being back, especially during the summertime, it was just a really good time for me. I felt just so much peace from being back here in Alabama, and I really felt like myself again for the first time in what felt like a year and a half. I ended up extending my trip like twice while I was in Alabama, and I ended up staying for I think almost 3 weeks. I think it was 2.5 weeks. I ended up getting dates for WWE, and I had plenty of time to prepare for that still. I helped my parents box up the house, had to say my goodbye to it, and as much as that sucked, I had processed so much of that grief and just stuff I had gone through my time living in Texas, and so it was kind of like saying goodbye to the house was that last step as to saying to myself, okay, I've processed this stuff and now it's time to move on. And it kind of chokes me up when I think about it because I still miss that house so much, which is funny because I literally live like down the street from it now. It was like my safe haven, and so it was really, really hard to say goodbye to that. But I did, and it came out okay. The house almost kept it around, even though I had dealt with it. So it was finally like another step in a direction of just moving forward because I had to just let go. I did that, I got through it, and then had to go back to Houston for I think like a few weeks and get ready for Orlando. Now, mind you, I got to do no wrestling when I was at the tryout in Detroit. I knew I was gonna be doing wrestling there, and I wanted to prepare for it, so I found a wrestling place near Houston. It was like south of Houston, kind of towards Galveston, called Reality of Wrestling, and it was owned by a former WWE Hall of Famer. I trained there for like, I think I only had like a week of being able to go, but it helped a lot because I'm not gonna lie, the wrestling stuff, it was really hard. Man, this story, there's just so much to everything. Next, we go to Orlando, but before I had to go to Orlando, while I'm training at that wrestling place in Houston, my lease at my apartment in Houston was going to end before I had to go to Orlando. So I had no way to be able to know where I was moving, which was kind of stressful, but also through that, I was really trusting God and I knew that everything would work out how it was supposed to. So I also felt this overwhelming feeling of peace. Come here, man. Oh, you're wet. I also felt this like overwhelming sense of peace through that though, because I really, at that point, I had just dealt with so much going back and forth, and I knew that God was working in my life at that point. I knew there was moving parts going on, and I knew that I didn't have control over that, and I knew that God had a plan ultimately and that everything was going to work out how he intended it to. So It sounded crazy. My parents were really stressed out about not knowing where the heck we were going. Ian also was kind of stressed out, and he was so great through that because he was going to be moving with me wherever I went, but he also couldn't make plans, and his lease was also ending in Houston. He had to kind of just sit back and rely on me through all of that. I had to box up my apartment and move out before going to Orlando. I was told that when I was in Orlando, we were going to get a yes or a no. So I was like, okay, I will know about if I get the job or not in just enough time, because my apartment in Houston, my lease ended on the 16th. Ian's ended the 28th, and I had to go to Orlando on the 17th. So I had to move everything out of my apartment into Ian's apartment. And luckily, his roommate Asher had just moved out to move to Dallas. So I had enough space to bring all of my furniture, everything into their apartment, get all of that situated, everything moved out of mine into Ian's, and then go to Orlando. That was such a cool experience. Who gets to say that they have wrestled with WWE? Like, honestly, it was really, really cool. It was really fun. They kicked my butt. It was hard, but it was really cool. And I, of course, really enjoy doing promos. I'm definitely better at the promo part than the wrestling part. We got to see all of the people who are like a part of NXT and who work with WWE every day. It was 2 full days of tryouts, and at the end, they told us that they would have an answer for us the following week on Monday. I was going home Friday, and we were supposed to have an answer that day while we were there. They made it very clear that like we would know by then. Well, that changed. So I was really frustrated because I'm like, okay, well, what the heck? Why is it literally, it's just one thing after another. Literally, like I felt like I couldn't catch a break. It's like, God, what the heck is going on? Like, what do you have going on here? Because I am so stressed. I was stressed at the moment where they said that they would tell us Monday. Because I'm like, oh my gosh, what the heck? I literally have to have a place to live. This is giving me no time. We had to be out of our apartment. I call Ian. He's like all eager to hear about it. And I tell him, so we don't actually know anything until next week. He was like, oh. So we were thinking we were gonna have to stay in Houston, probably get an Airbnb for a week or 2. Ian had gotten his stuff kind of packed up while I was gone. We wanted to go see Asher, Ian's roommate, who had moved to Dallas. We wanted to go see just him. He had just gotten engaged, so we wanted to go up there. We were happy for him. So we went up to Dallas. We stayed for like one night, came back to Houston the next day. So we went up there, I think like Sunday, we came back Monday. I still had not heard anything from WWE, and me and Ian started thinking, okay, like maybe we'll move to Dallas. So we looked at some apartments there, and it just did not feel right. On the car trip home from Dallas, I get a phone call from WWE. We had another little group chat of the little group of like 5 of us who were in Orlando for that camp. I had just gotten a text in that group chat from one of the girls who was there, and she said that she didn't make it, and she was like wishing us all luck. As soon as I got that notification, I got a call from WWE. It was the same recruiter that had been talking to me through everything. He was asking me how I liked the camp, how it all went, how I thought it went, and he said that unfortunately they wouldn't be able to give me an offer at that moment. He was like, it's not a no for forever. You again had really, really strong promos. He told me that they would change nothing on that they love my promos, they stand out. The only thing I could improve is just wrestling techniques, which of course I knew I needed to improve on because I'm not a wrestler. None of us were wrestlers. So I was just like, okay. I got that call in the car, and I had it on speaker. I was with Ian, so he heard it, and I'm still like talking in the group chat we had. So nobody from that camp got an offer, which was really bizarre because there was like 5 of us. We were thinking that, you know, they might even take everyone, because why else would they like bring us down for this and have to put us up in hotels? We all had rental cars, and more travel, and they were paying for our food and everything. Like, it was a lot, and they took a lot of their employees' times. Like, all of their coaches were working with us. They put a lot into it. We thought it was really weird that nobody got it. But in that moment, I knew that was God's answer. Before I went to Orlando and before I moved everything out of my apartment, I prayed. I just wanted to surrender everything over to God. I got out paper, pen, and prayed, like on paper. I prayed a very specific prayer, and I basically said to God, I want to do what you're calling me to do, and if this WWE thing is for me and it's what you're calling me to do, then make it happen. And if it's not from you and it's not what I'm supposed to do, then don't let it happen. So I instantly knew that that was God's answer. That's not what he was calling me to do. Now, I think God had a purpose for me going through all of that. It taught me even more to surrender my own feelings, my own stresses, to surrender my own control over what I think my plan for my life is supposed to look like, and just listen to God and let him do the work, let him open the doors, let him move all the parts. And so it really forced me to give everything over to him and listen to him. And it also forced me to try something totally new, totally out of my comfort zone, and kind of rebuild some of that confidence in myself and just prove to myself that I am capable and I am worthy. Sometimes I'm my own worst critic. I'm a perfectionist, always have been, and I can be really, really hard on myself because I've always had really high expectations for myself. So those were two things that came out of that situation. And it's a really good story. Who can say that they've gotten to do that? So I'm really grateful for all of that, even though it was crazy. We're coming home from Dallas, just got told no. I was disappointed at first because, again, I was giving it over to God, but I also had this feeling, well, like, this is just so random. So, like, I feel like this is what I'm supposed to do, and, like, this is God opening this door that I would have never thought of myself. I'm supposed to do this. So, like, I have a good feeling about it. Why else would they bring me back? They loved my promos. I think I could be good at this. I was giving it over to God, but I was still kind of, like, not fully doing that. So I was disappointed at first just because now I'm in this boat where we have to move in less than a week and I have no idea where we're going at all. And that thing that I thought maybe was what I was supposed to do wasn't. So now I had really no plan, no clue what I was gonna do. Ian brings up in the car after I'm kind of upset. I did cry a little bit just because of stress and like a feeling of being overwhelmed with, okay, well, what's next? Ian brings up, well, do you want to move back to Alabama? Honestly, do you want to move back to Alabama? Because I think I always had this feeling that I was supposed to move back to Alabama. I think that I knew deep down that that was what I needed in that moment to really start to feel like myself again so that I can continue down a path of following God's will for my life and letting God use me. But I know that in order to do that, I need to be myself and I need to feel like myself, and I didn't for so long. So I think I knew deep down that, yeah, I did want to go back to Alabama and I wanted to be by my family. I knew that that would make me happy, but I was scared to admit that to myself because for some reason that felt like failure, because I had moved away and took this big risk, and I felt like I always knew I wasn't supposed to stay in my hometown. I needed to go somewhere. My sister, who's older than me, always told me that I needed to like leave, to not stay in my hometown. So going back felt like failure to me. It felt like if I go home, I've failed at everything I came here for. I've failed at everything I've tried so far. But that's not true at all. I placed that belief on myself, but it wasn't true. When Ian asked me that, I was like, well, I don't know. And he's like, kind of getting to the point and unburying the fact that, like, yes, I do want to move back to Alabama. And at that moment, it's also like, what other option do I have? I don't want to make another impulsive decision to move to some random place. But moving back to Alabama, we still needed to find a place to live because we couldn't live with my parents, either one of my parents, even temporarily, because I have 2 dogs. So like we still had to come up with a plan. We kind of just decided like, okay, like we're gonna go to Alabama. We think that's the best option right now. Ian, I think, knew that it was gonna be really good for me because he also wanted me to be myself again. He was such a support through the entire time where I wasn't myself and I was in a really low point, and he didn't like seeing me that way. I think he knew that it was also what I needed, and he's so supportive to me, which I'm also really blessed and grateful for. He literally just wants the best for me. I started looking on Zillow at apartments on our drive back to Houston from Dallas. It was a little relieving to see how much cheaper rent prices were in Alabama as well. We're like obsessively looking at that point. When we get back to Houston, Ian was kind of calling his family and telling them like, hey, we're gonna move to Alabama, because his family was excited that we might have been moving to Orlando, because they live like an hour and a half from Orlando. Everything kind of started to come together out of nowhere. When I was looking back at not getting the job that like I thought was it, I thought was God's thing for me, I kind of just had this realization that God really, really answered my prayer. Sorry if the camera changed, my light that I'm using died, so I had to plug it in. It's also, I've been talking for so long, it's starting to get dark, so if the lighting's shifted, that's why. What I was saying before the light died was God really answered my prayer because he didn't let it happen. And I specifically asked him to not let it happen if it's not from him and it's not his way for me. And I started to like think back to when I was at the camp. You know, I don't know exactly what happened, but I think something probably that was not planned happened on their end for them to have brought all of us down there and then give nobody an offer. I just kind of had this feeling that God literally did what I asked because maybe that they were going to give me a job offer and I would have taken it, and I wasn't supposed to. I feel like that was God. These aren't things that you know for sure. I think that maybe something happened with like their funding for bringing people onto NXT because WWE had just merged with UFC. One of the guys that's like in charge of their talent coming on was there for the whole camp, and on the last day he kind of hectically left after taking a phone call, and then we never saw him again. You know, who knows what happened, but in my eyes, in my heart, I feel that God protected me in that moment. It's really, really cool looking back on this whole experience, and it's taught me so much about just putting my trust in the Lord and letting him do all the moving pieces, because I've always known God has a plan for each and every one of us. He has a plan for my life. He has a plan for your life. I was made for a reason. I was made on purpose, and he's given me all of the experiences and character traits, and he's made me who I am to fulfill his purpose for my life. But I've never really fully let him be in control of actually bringing that to fruition. So this whole experience has really taught me how to give God control. It's been really cool to hear from God again. You know, I've always been a believer, but I didn't have enough of a relationship with God for a while to actually hear from him and to feel like I had prayers that were answered. Me and Ian get back from Dallas, and we're still looking for places. We knew that we needed a house because it was going to be so much easier for us having 2 German Shepherds to not live in an apartment and to have a yard. We found like 2 that we had narrowed it down to, and my mom, she's a realtor here. She was able to come and see them for us and like give us a tour through FaceTime and like by taking some videos for us. We literally had a few days at this point to have a plan of where we were going to live. We found 2 houses that we narrowed it down to that we liked. They were both 3-bed, 2-bath houses. We ultimately decided we liked this one the best that we're in right now. Just because of the location, it's like really, really close to where I grew up. My dad's best friend literally lives on our street, just like down a few houses. I was like, what's the chance of that? And this one also has a bigger yard. It actually has like a really big yard for the dogs. We decided we were gonna apply for this house. It also, we found out, which we liked this more, that this house is managed by people here locally. And one thing about Alabama is people here are so amazing and so nice and so friendly and hospitable. Southern hospitality is real here. It was just gonna be a lot easier, whereas the management of the other property was some management company that wasn't here. My mom was having to deal with like a bunch of automated stuff to even go see the house. They had a bunch of extra fees tied into like applying for the house, for the rent, for the pets. So everything seemed to be pointing to this house. There was gonna be no application fee. The people were local. It was a lot easier. Ian was even like, holy crap, like people there are so nice. The people we're talking to are so nice. Because it was like such a shift from the people in Houston who were living in downtown Houston. A lot of people there aren't super friendly. Now, we did meet some really amazing people in Houston. We even had some really awesome neighbors who remind me a lot of my sister and my brother-in-law. And they even let me stay at their place in their guest bed the night that we had literally no furniture to sleep on. I got to sleep in a nice bed and take a shower at their place. My second part of the prayer that I wrote on paper before going to Orlando was that wherever we end up moving, please, Lord, let us have a plan of where we're going to live before we have to be out of the apartment. God says to pray specific prayers. We're supposed to pray for specific prayers and bold prayers. And sometimes I think we feel like we don't have our prayers answered, but it's because we haven't gotten specific with God. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get specific. So when I prayed on that piece of paper, I asked God, please let us have a plan and a place to stay lined up by the time we have to be out of our apartment here in Texas. And I didn't really think that was gonna happen at this point. He ended up coming through on that. And I specifically asked for a house with a yard for my dogs. That's exactly what we ended up getting. So again, we found this house managed by local people who have been amazing and helpful and personable with us. They ended up even giving us a refundable pet deposit, which I've never heard of before. And so we applied and we got approved and we signed our lease before we left Houston. We knew we were gonna have a place lined up. We got all of our utilities set up because they said that in order for us to be able to get into the house to sleep here, we had to set all of that up. We stayed when we drove to Alabama at my dad's house, and then that morning we just woke up and drove here and moved in. And it worked out better than I could have ever planned or imagined myself. I mean, this whole past year, I've been so scattered all over the place trying to figure it out myself. I wouldn't have figured it out if I didn't do what I did by giving it over to God. That's how we ended up back in Alabama, and coming here has just made me feel so much more like me again. It was 100% what I needed, and it just couldn't have worked out any better.
Hey, YouTube.
I'm talking about just like how we ended up here. The whole story with like the WWE and like
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, we come to Alabama now. I actually entertain a little bit, and we're going to fish more, and there's college football, baby. Did I sound like a true Alabamian?
No.
I got him. I picked him up. Ow! Who's your good boy? He let me. Oh, he's sitting on me.
I still don't really fully know what I'm supposed to do, like career-wise. I do know what the dream is that God has placed on my heart. Had that dream for forever, which is basically doing social media. It goes a little farther than that, but to make it brief, pursuing social media is what I've always felt called to do. And that's why I'm here, and I've decided I'm not gonna keep boxing myself into those things that made me feel so far from myself. I don't know why I put those expectations on myself to just box myself into like fitness, because that's not the full picture of who I am. If you've seen my Instagram, my TikTok, I've been posting content again consistently, but it's a little bit different than it was before. So I'm posting more lifestyle content, and I do want to get back on YouTube. I felt like this was kind of the perfect video to start showing my face here again, because I've been gone for so long, and I've tried to make so many YouTube videos, sit down videos, vlogs, and none of them felt right. But I feel like this kind of did it, kind of tied everything together. And now that I'm here, this is where God was calling me to go, to get back on the path in the direction that He wants me to go in. This is where God has called me to be. So I'm still trying to kind of navigate what it looks like going forward, and like what it is exactly that He's calling me to do. But I'm such a perfectionist that if I don't just do something, I'm never going to, because I'm just gonna sit here and think about, well, am I supposed to do this or this or this? Like, there's too many options to the point where it'll just overwhelm me. I've just been forcing myself to just start. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like, I always place that expectation on myself. This quote I found on Pinterest the other day, and I saved it because I felt like it kind of rang true to going forward from here. It says, finish something, anything. Stop researching, planning, preparing to do the work, and just do the work. It doesn't matter how good or how bad it is. You don't need to set the world on fire with your first try. You just need to prove to yourself that you have what it takes to produce something. There are no artists, athletes, entrepreneurs, or scientists who become great by half finishing their work. Stop debating what you should make and just make something. That's kind of just how I'm feeling right now. I need to just start moving in the right direction for God to continue to reveal to me exactly what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. But I do know the dream that He's placed on my heart, that I've had since I was honestly like a young teenager, probably 12 or 13. So I'm just gonna do what I can right now to continue moving in that direction and letting Him handle the rest. So my content's just gonna continue to evolve with my life. If you want to stick around for that, then great. I know a lot of people probably followed me before just for fitness content, and that's totally fine if you don't really care for what I post going forward. But it feels good, and it feels in alignment with myself and what God wants me to do. If you listened through this whole video, thank you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.